Hello, welcome back. Today I'd like to show you how to perform join in Spark. Like always, I'd like to use a predefined data frame which I have, and you can see it on the screen. So this data frame contains a couple of columns. I'd like to perform group by and then to perform join. There are basically two ways to perform join in Spark, and in this video I'd like to cover that. So let's get started. If I show the DF, as you can see, this is the data frame which I have, and the first thing is like to calculate the number of trades per platform, and I'm creating a data frame for that. I'm creating this data frame with the group by trade per platform. I'd like to group by asset and platform column. And then I use the aggregation function, and I'd like to count how many trades we have. So I use the count function, and I rename this number of trades per asset and platform. If I show this data frame, we should be able to see this data frame here. As you can see, we have this asset column, we have the platform column, eToro plus 500, and for each of these platforms there are 2 trades done. Like for eToro there are 2 trades, for plus 500 there are 6 trades. Similarly, I want to calculate another statistics. So for example, I'd like to calculate number of assets. Then I use the group by, and I group by asset and platform, and I am using count distinct of trade name as number of assets per platform. So if I show this data frame, I'm having another data frame like this: asset, platform, and number of assets. So on eToro there are 2 assets available, and plus 500 I have 5 assets available. To join these 2 data frame, or you can imagine merging them based on asset and platform, I'd like to use the join operation. I want to show how it's possible to do that. The first approach for the join is using the sec or sequence, and it's like if I define the join df, the first approach, I'm writing it here, first approach for join. Here I'm defining the first data frame, which is this data frame. I'm using it on the left side, and then I'm using the join keyword, and then I'd like to use the number of assets here, and there is a sequence which I'd like to perform the join based on asset and platform. And here I'd like to show the data frame as well after the join. Show, we are saying that we have the asset, platform, and we have this column out of the first group by, and we have the other column out of the second group by. By default, this join is inner join, so if I add inner, there should not be any change in the results. The second approach which I'd like to show you for the join is a little bit different, and I'd like to show you here second approach for join, and I define join df2. I'd like to use the first data frame, the one on the left side, join with the second data frame on the right side. This part is exactly the same, but there is a slight difference that I'd like to use the call keyword. So I'm using call. The first join should be based on asset, and this should be equal to the columns on the right side of the join, which is again asset. And there is another condition first data frame or the data frame on the left side, I'd like to join to consider platform as well, with the platform on the right side of the join dot call platform. And if I do this and perform the join, I believe the result should be the same. So if I say show, I can also add the inner here, and the result I believe is the same. Here I used the sequence of columns, and here I used like the left data frame dot call asset and the right data frame dot call asset. So from both the left data frame and the right data frame, you need to select the columns and make them equal. So the problem here is that we have duplicated columns like asset platform and asset platform. The best way, in case you would like to proceed with the second join, it's better to rename the columns in the beginning. So let me show you. So for example, if I want to say number of assets on the right side, better to rename the columns. I like to say, okay, renamed. I want to create a new data frame, which number of assets I'd like to rename the column. So I'm saying asset, and for example, I can rename it to asset v2. And also the other column platform, I'd like to also rename it. I'm telling platform to platform v2. And so first of all, I'm renaming these two columns. If I print the schema, I can see asset v2, platform v2, and the number of assets is there. And now I'd like to create another data frame, join df3. So the left side of the join is still equal dot join. The right side, instead of using the number of assets, I'm using number of assets renamed. And let me copy the other part from here. I'm copying these conditions for the join from here. Instead of asset, I'm using like asset v2, platform v2 on the right side. And right after the join, you can drop those extra columns, meaning that asset v2 and platform v2. If I show this to data frame, we should be able to see the same result. Asset v2 cannot resolve column asset v2. I believe this column should be there. Number of assets renamed. This is still wrong because we need to rename this part also to number of assets renamed, and then this should be working. So you can see that now we don't have this extra column. So let me tell you, if I print joined df2, let me compare these two. The second approach actually had these duplicated columns, and with this renaming we could remove those duplicated columns. But basically the second approach, the result, and the first approach should be exactly the same. So the first approach, as I mentioned to you, you can achieve that through a sequence of columns. You can define the columns in which you'd like to use as a sequence. For the second approach, it's better to first rename the columns, for example, on the right side of the join, and then you can drop those columns because those are the common columns and we don't want them to be duplicated.